Okay, you've got question sheets tonight. Try to keep the questions short and succinct, and hopefully I can point those out as we go through our study.
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Good evening. This is our 7th lesson, so we're kind of the halfway stage. It feels like we're a bit more than halfway. In our studies today, we've seen how angels and humans were created by God with an ability to be morally responsible. And what's the implication of that? If you're morally responsible, what does that infer? What does that imply? That we have free will. That's a biggie, isn't it? If we don't have free will, then how can we be morally responsible? That's a good question to ask Calvinists, okay? Or those that believe in original sin, Catholic friends, because they'll be stumped. They won't know how to answer that. Because if you really get down to the nub of it, you can't. Okay? Because if God's already predetermined everything you're going to do, every step you take in your life, where does free will stand? Now, there are proverbs. There's wisdom of God that says that, many of the plans of man, I forget what proverb it is, but who is it that guides our steps? But notice, he guides our steps. That doesn't mean that he's meticulously planned everything. Okay? He guides them. And we know that we're guided, don't we? Who's our guide in the New Testament as Christians? It's the Holy Spirit, isn't it? Yeah. So that means that we have the ability to choose right from wrong. We have the ability to work in accordance with God's will or to rebel against it. Because each of us and each created spiritual being, the angels, has a mind and a will of their own, which means they have the ability to make choices. Therefore, their decisions can and do affect others. Okay, you've heard of the term collateral damage? Yeah. What would be the collateral damage of a drunk driver running through a light?
Killing somebody that's innocent, that's just.
Yeah. I mean, he might miss
Not in their
everything,
own
but he might
business.
hit somebody who's totally innocent in terms of driving through a green light. That was their right of way. Okay. So, our decisions can and do affect others, for better or for worse. As we've seen with Daniel's prayer in Daniel 10 that was delayed, the response that God sent was delayed by how long? 3 weeks, was it? Yeah. And in the end, it involved the intervention of the archangel Michael. And also we looked at a passage that talked about Israel fighting Moab on an occasion, 2 Kings 3:26. And the king there of Moab sacrifices his son, and that enrages his god, Shemosh, who's probably a fallen angel that's over Moab. And that causes the Israelites to be repelled out, away, and to lose that battle. So there are times when we, like those examples there, where we see that evil decisions or those that are demonic have the ability to thwart even God's plans. Okay? So there really is a battle going on. And that's because of the free will. And I think I said something last time about if we don't have free will, how could there be agape love? That's a pretty deep question, but if you don't have free will, then agape love cannot happen. Okay? The two are opposites. Well, they clash, put it that way. Not opposites, but you've got to have free will to be able to choose to love someone to that level of sacrificial love. Okay, And yet that's what God is seeking from all of us, isn't it? Yes.
If there's no free will,
Mm.
then choosing God gives him no glory.
You can't give him glory, can you? No. So, I mean, those are all side effects that he desires all those things, and yet that can't happen. Okay. So those are all problems that certain Christian faiths have to really struggle with, and they don't struggle with them at all. I don't think. So the most powerful and the most rebellious of these gods was, and he still is, an angel who came to bear the name Satan. Okay. And what is that name? What is that word? It's the Hebrew for the word adversary. Okay. It's just a noun. It's just a noun. The adversary. While this figure doesn't play a central role, an overt central role in the thinking of the Old Testament authors, because we've got that raging cosmic sea that does so much damage in the early part of Genesis. We've got those cosmic threatening sea monsters like Leviathan and Behemoth and others. There is still a vague awareness that there is a leader of the opposition. The enemy does have a leader who is particularly opposed to God's rule. And on the basis of his opposition towards God and his opposition towards God's special creation, human beings, this God is called the adversary. And the adversary is literally a translation of Satan. Okay? So that's the Hebrew. That's where that word comes from. Okay? The very term in Hebrew, Satan, means adversary, or one who opposes. One who opposes. The verb form of this word, Satan, to oppose or to be an adversary, appears 6 times in the Old Testament. Okay, if you want those passages, I'll give you them to you. One of them we're going to see in verb form in a moment, anyway. The noun form of the word appears 27 times. 7 times in the Old Testament, it's clearly talking of a human adversary. Okay, for our purposes of our study, I'm not bothered about that. Twice it's used of the angel of the Lord. Can you think where that would be? When was the angel of the Lord an adversary to a prophet? That's a good. You'd think that would be the case, wouldn't you? No, it's in Numbers. Do you remember? He had a donkey. Balaam. Yeah, and the angel of the Lord opposed Balaam. He stopped him from going to see the king of, I think, Moab again. And he opposed him, stopped him in the road. So twice the angel of the Lord is called Satan in the Hebrew. But it's just a word. It's not a proper name in that sense. Okay. Now, those aside, the remaining 18 times that the term is used in the Old Testament, it's found in just 3 passages of Scripture. And those are the ones we're going to look at tonight. Those are the ones that we're interested in looking at. And they're going to be as follows. The first one we're going to look at is Job. Okay, chapter 1, chapter 2. The second passage we're going to look at is in Zechariah, chapter 3, verse 1 and following. And then the third passage, which is the only time the word Satan seems to be used as a proper noun, a name, an actual name, is in 1 Chronicles. Okay. First Chronicles, I think it's 21:1, isn't it? Yeah, 21:1. Okay, so those are the passages we're going to look at tonight. All right. In each of these passages, Satan is going to be portrayed as a force that God must reckon with. Okay, can't ignore him. Okay, got to deal with him. It's got to challenge him. In light of the later infamy of Satan in the Gospels of Jesus's time, which we'll come to in our subsequent lessons, it's important for us to analyse carefully what these passages have to say about Satan and what they seem to infer about his situation and his character. Okay, and we need to understand those issues surrounding the wider context of these passages of Scripture. So let's start with Job chapter 1. Job chapters 1 and 2 are really a prologue, okay? A prologue to the epic poem that follows for the rest of the book. What would you say was the subject matter of the book of Job? You have to put it just in a few words. What's Job about?
God was talking to Satan and asking him what he thought about him.
Okay, well, that's the prologue. But I mean, the whole book. What's the whole book about?
Can anything make you
Suffering.
renounce God?
Say that again, sorry.
Can anything make you renounce God?
Can anything make you renounce God? That's pretty good, actually. I like that.
It's
I like that.
about suffering.
Suffering. Purpose of suffering. Why do we suffer? What about, is evil an important subject in, yeah? I mean, would someone reading the book of Job, looking at Job's friends, so-called, would they have some questions about where they think evil comes from? I think you would. I think evil is one of the big things that Job tackles. Okay, why do evil things happen to good people? That's a question that most people have today, isn't it? I hear it all the time.
Why not?
Why not?
Right?
Well, you mean Job?
No.
But it's, yeah, I mean, it tackles some really big issues, some really pertinent issues. They were pertinent in 2000 whatever BC in Job's time, and they're just as important to be tackled today. We've all asked those questions ourselves, haven't we, at times? When you see an atrocity, you think, how could that happen? Why did God allow that to happen? In our weaker moments, we ask questions like that, don't we? Yeah. And so that's why it's part of the wisdom literature. That's why Job is the first book of wisdom. Okay. But it also, this prologue, Job 1 and 2, provides us with the most extensive reference to Satan in the whole of the Old Testament. And it provides us the opportunity to study a crucial issue that concerns the whole purpose of the Old Testament. And that is God's relationship to evil in general and to Satan in particular. Okay? Why is that there? Why does God have this relationship, this opposition from Satan? And how does evil fit into this whole equation? Okay, one matter that all Christians need to be able to lay to rest. In other words, we need to be able to confidently be able to give a reason for, to understand, is the relationship between God and evil. Okay, way too many brothers and sisters in the church even are confused as to the origins of evil in the world. Okay. And they'll ask questions like, did God create evil? Was it part of his creation? What about this question, which I think is on your sheet?
He created the devil. I mean, snake,
Yeah,
or he created that evil.
right.
Well, he created the angel. The angel chose to fall, so he didn't create evil.
Right. Well,
Created.
I'm not necessarily wanting to answer the question right now, but those are questions that people ask, okay? They're examples of questions that people have. Other people, in studying this, they say, well, could Satan be God's alter ego? You know, that's where some of their argumentation leads. And yeah, I want to show that that's not a good way to look at the problem. In answering these questions, it's interesting to note that those who believe that God created evil commit the cardinal sin, in my book, of basing their answer off one or two isolated scriptures. Okay, scriptures like Isaiah 45:7, which we looked at the other day. Scriptures like Lamentations 3:38 and Amos 3:6. I'll look at the Isaiah one again quickly. Isaiah 45:7. I think we looked at this the other day. Isaiah 45 verse 7. Now, if you just read this scripture on its own, okay, it says, I form light and create darkness. I make well-being and I create calamity. I am the Lord Jehovah who does all these things. Okay. What's the danger of just taking that verse and then saying that, well, God obviously allows evil, maybe he even creates it? What would be wrong with doing that?
Well, God does cause calamity, and he uses it
Mm-hmm. But how?
to bring people back to him.
Okay.
The Old Testament is about largely the Israelites falling away,
Mm.
and then he lets another tribe conquer them.
Okay.
Calamity.
So would that fit the context here?
Yeah.
You don't think so? Okay, let's read the beginning of the chapter. Okay. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, to subdue nations before him, and to loose the belts of kings, to open doors before him that gates may not be closed. I will go before you, Cyrus. Cyrus was the king of Persia, okay, and level the exalted places. I will break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness and the hoards in secret places, that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who call you by your name. By the way, this is some 100 and something years before Cyrus even existed. Okay, Isaiah was prophesying right before the fall of Israel, the northern kingdom. So that's 730 BC, 720 BC. Cyrus doesn't appear on the scene until, where would it be? The end of the captivity in Babylon. Okay, 540 something BC. Okay, what's the math there? Is that 200 years? Nearly 200 years. Okay. For the sake of my servant Jacob, verse 4, and Israel, my chosen, I call you by your name. I name you, though you do not know me. I am the Lord, and there is no other besides me. There is no God. I will equip you, though you do not know me, so that people may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form light and create darkness. I make well-being and create calamity. I am the Lord who does all these things. And on he goes. What's the context here?
Obviously, I'm the supreme one.
He's the supreme one, but
Everything.
what is Cyrus in God's eyes? What is God purposing King Cyrus to be?
He's his instrument.
He's his instrument. Like Nebuchadnezzar was to Judah, Cyrus is going to be to destroy Babylon, basically. and cause the, the people to be able to settle again in Jerusalem after the captivity, the exiles to come home. So God's going to do that. And he's going to be, Cyrus is going to be, therefore, an instrument of God's judgment, which fits what you were saying. So that's an example, yes.
And righteousness. okay,
Yes.
Is not negated
Uh-huh.
by dealing with those that are evil.
Yeah.
Okay, God has to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, your kids, when you ask them to bend over and take a spanking,
Uh-huh.
you're not the bad guy. You know, they are. They
I'm in
cause,
someone's eyes.
they cause, and God's the same. God's the same.
Good.
He has to act.
Yeah, you're right. He must act, and he says, I will act for the sake of my name. That's the only reason I'm going to save you, Israel, for the sake of my name. Moses pointed that out to him one time, didn't he? Because God was fixing to destroy Israel at the base of the mountain. Well, they just made a covenant with it. So, yes, good point. So, do you see that there's some complex things that we've got to get our heads around? Otherwise, we're going to be very confused about where evil comes from. I could go to those other passages, but we really don't have time. But if you want to look at Lamentations 3:38, that would be good for you. Amos 3:6 would be good as well. But the most extensive reference to Satan, Job 1 and 2, is probably the oldest one as well. I think Job's a very early book in the Bible. So in the prologue of the book, we see Satan appears where the sons of God gather for a heavenly council meeting in verse 6. Let's just read that. Job, it says, now, there was a day when, my version says, the sons of God. Okay, so who are the sons of God? Are they the same beings that were the sons of God in Genesis 6:2 that we finished with last lesson?
Angels.
Angels, aren't they? Yeah, because that term's always used in reference to angels, not humans in the Old Testament. Okay, and they came to present themselves before who? Jehovah. And who was there also? Who came among them? And I want you to think carefully about the way the language is posited here, the way that terminology is used. And Satan also came among them. What does that sound like to you?
He came slinking up.
Slinking up. You think he had a rightful place there?
No.
No, he gate crashed the deal, didn't he? He wasn't invited. Okay, so that's what comes across to me. Why? Because look at what God says to him. The Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? I'm trying to put it in the sense of the question. Where have you come from? Okay, you've got no right to be here, in other words, is what I'm kind of saying, isn't it? And Satan answered the Lord and said, what? I've been going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it. Does that sound like he's got a definite purpose?
Yeah.
Kind of aimless, really, isn't it?
He's saying, I'll go where I want to, when I want to, and you're not gonna stop.
Yeah, causing trouble.
Bruce,
Yes.
and also, early on in the Bible, it makes Satan a step ahead of his buddies. He was not one of the generic
Right.
ones. He was one of the big ones. And
I think he was an archangel or a cherub or something.
That's reading the biggest fights in the Bible.
Mhm.
That one fights it himself over his power.
Yeah, good point. So, the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? So I think the order of business just changed a bit, didn't it? Because of who turns up. You consider my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. Have you considered him? What does Satan respond to God? Oh, by the way,
He doesn't fear you for nothing.
your versions have capital letter for Satan, don't
Uh-huh.
they? Which implies that it's, definite article all the way through here. So the adversary is how he's actually referred to. The adversary. At this point in time, he's just the adversary. Okay. Okay. Satan answers, the adversary answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You bless the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land because of it. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and I guarantee he'll curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, to the adversary, behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So what does Satan do?
Left the Lord
Goes out from the prison's room.
That's it. Done. He's out. Out of the meeting. Okay. And God gave him some commands there, didn't he? What were those 2 commands?
You couldn't touch Job.
Yeah, you can't touch him,
Everything else that he had.
but you can take all of his possessions. Okay. So that's the first time that he appears at one of these councils, heavenly councils. And the way I tried to read that, I'm not an actor, as you can tell, I'm not a thespian, but I tried to put that in the tone of how it would have gone across. Okay. How did Satan sound there?
Arrogant.
Did he sound like he's a buddy of God's?
No.
No.
No, he didn't, did he? Was he being facetious, sarcastic? Was there invective in there? Sort of trying to belittle God? Yeah, I'd say so.
He also didn't know, the faith of, Job. God only knew that.
Uh-huh.
And Satan didn't know, so he figured he could just go and wipe him out and he could curse God.
Right. Yeah. It seems to me that Satan questions God's conviction that Job is serving God out of a pure heart. What's the word that appears there? Not pure heart. What's the word that appears in your text?
Blameless.
Blameless.
Upright.
Okay, but there's another word, isn't there, later on? Integrity, I think, is the term that he uses.
Shuns evil.
Right, shuns evil. Okay. So God, by saying those things, what's he doing for Job? Is he promoting him? Is he testifying, giving testimony of this man, isn't he? He's standing up for Job. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? But what's Satan really? Who is Satan really taken to trial here? Who's Satan really challenging?
He's trying to challenge God.
He's challenging God, isn't it? That's what this is really about. Okay? It's bigger than man. Man's just the collateral damage. Okay? And he hates us because we're made in the image of God. And he hates that. Okay? But his real enemy here, the one he really wants to beat down and go at and turn others against God, I guarantee you that was his purpose for going there, other angels, is God himself. That's who he's trying to challenge directly. Okay? He's saying, you haven't got integrity, God. So whatever he's saying against Job, that accusation stands in his eyes against God as well. Okay? So in response, God allows Satan to test Job. Okay? He's going to destroy all his material possessions that Satan perceived to be those fringe benefits that God had given him, the hedge that's around it. Okay? And that sets the stage for the poem that follows. While some scholars believe that Satan being at the council meeting proves he's one of the sons of God, I think they're missing the point, the distinction the writer purposely makes when he says, the sons of God came to present themselves to the Lord, and the adversary also came among them. Okay, I think that's a clear distinction. Okay, so I would posit that to start with. And it's interesting to me that Satan comes across as one who's kind of roaming around. And it makes me think of 1 Peter 5:8. What's that passage say?
No, no.
So Satan is like your adversary is like a roaring lion. Yeah. Looking for someone to pick off. And that seems to fit really well with the description in my mind here.
Like those National Geographic things where you see the animals and, you know, you see that one out there, or sick animal out there by itself, and all of a sudden you have.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll move around
Yeah,
and try and
it's
break
animal
one off the herd. Yeah.
Lies
That's
and
dinner.
lies.
Okay. It would seem that the adversary's questions in chapter 1 are much more an attack on God and how God orders his creation than they are actually an attack on Job's piety. It's not Job who's on trial here. This is your number 5. It's God who's on trial for his conduct of world order that goes right back to the very beginning. I don't know about you guys, but for me, there's also something rather sinister about Satan's eagerness to destroy Job. The way in which he goes about it. I mean, he does it with full effort, it seems to me, and he goes over the top in what he's doing, you know, and he's pleased to do that. And so hence why God has to give him that command. You are not allowed to lay a hand on him. Okay, but the second time that he appears at the council, again, there's a day, chapter 2, verse 1, when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and the adversary also came among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come? What are you doing here?" And Satan answers the Lord and says, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to the adversary, "You consider my servant Job, that there's none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and who turns away from evil. He still holds fast his what? Integrity." Do you know what that word only is found in Job 4 times, I think, and in the Psalms? That's the only place it's found in the Bible, that Hebrew word. Okay, I want to do some more investigation of the significance of that. But integrity is a big thing, isn't it? If you haven't got integrity, you haven't got anything worth having. In my book, that's what God's looking for. That's the kind of heart that God's looking for. If you've got integrity, you can be as lost as anything, but God knows that exists in you, and he knows he can find you and change you. Okay, so that's big. It's the only reason I'm here. He still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against it. Pretty strong words now. Okay, you incited me against it. That's not the last time we'll see that word. To destroy him, how?
Without any reason.
Without reason. Without reason. So that's what God thinks of the adversary's challenge in the first chapter, doesn't it? Well, it's because of all the fringe benefits you give him. That's the only reason he gives you glory and praises you. Take those fringe benefits away, and he'll curse you to your face. And God says, that's a non-starter. That's rubbish. Okay? That is absolutely rubbish, Satan. That's without reason. So Satan answered the Lord, verse 4, and said, "Skin for skin. All that a man has, he'll give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he'll curse you to your face." And the Lord says to the adversary, "Behold, he's in your hand. Only spare his life." So now he can stretch out his hand against Job, but he has to spare his life. And does Satan have any choice in that?
No.
He has no choice in that. That's interesting as well, isn't it? So, off he goes. Do you think he waited very long before he attacks him? No, just one verse. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, and where did he go?
Straight to Job.
Straight to Job's house. And he struck Job with what?
Painful sores.
Wells.
Mine says loathsome sores. So they're not only painful, They look and smell horrible. Don't you know? Ooh, he's a mess. From the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Have you ever had chicken pox? Did you have them as a kid or did you have them as an adult?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a kid, I don't think.
Let me tell you,
can handle
you
it.
should have had them when you were a kid, because you don't want them when you're older. It's not nice. Okay, but this is 100 times worse than that. Okay, so the poor guy is in agony and no one wants to go near him. You know, he's a mess. And that's all Satan's doing. Okay, and the poor fella's scratching himself with broken pottery. So, and he's sitting on an ash heap. What's the significance of that? Well, why is he sitting on the ash heap? What just happened in chapter 1?
I thought because it was morning.
He didn't lose just his possessions. What else did he lose? All his kids. So he's mourning anyway, isn't he? That's why he's on the ash heap. Okay. But what does his wife say to him?
First time died.
What does she say to him?
Holding on to your dear spirit and my
Yeah.
integrity.
Yeah. How do you think she says it?
Okay.
Are you still holding on fast to your integrity? Look at what he's done to us. And can you blame her? I kind of think we give her a hard time. She's just existing in the real world. We've lost everything. She's lost the kids. Now, who feels it more? The husband or the wife? Losing kids. Let's be honest. She gave birth to them, didn't she? She carried them. So of course she's hurting. Okay? And it's too much for her. Curse God and die. Because that's how she's feeling. Okay?
Bruce,
But he said to her, you speak like one of the foolish women would speak.
You just said she could take it. She could, because God gives us that.
Mm-hmm. Shall we receive good from God? Shall we not receive evil as well? Now, I don't know if that's the best translation. I think the Hebrew kind of implies disaster. It doesn't use the word evil. Okay. Should we receive good things, good blessings from God? And shall we not receive disasters as well? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Okay. Disaster, calamity, that's more the meaning of the Hebrew. All right. That sets the scene. Okay. And then what follows is a discourse between Job and his friends, and then there's another fellow who a prophet gets involved, and they tackle a lot of different worldviews about evil and, you know, association to evil and what the effects will be on you and all that kind of stuff. So it becomes very much a theological argument, okay? But it's full of human falsities, kind of what we call today humanism, okay? But superstition and all kinds of other things get rolled in there until we get to that chapter 38. And that's beyond the scope of where I really want to go with this. But when Satan carries out, when he's there, the adversary is not intent on following God's orders. He doesn't have a choice when it comes. He'd rather kill you, I think, or make him suffer and then kill him. But God puts those limits. It's kind of like you put the boundaries there for the sea and you shall not go beyond it. Well, it's the same thing, okay, with Satan. When Satan carries out these destructive desires, he does so with great aplomb, doesn't he? I mean, he really gets to it. He's thorough, yeah? He's going to make life hell. I think he even delights in it. He comes across very much as independent of God, doesn't he? He comes across as a source of evil. I think so. certainly a malicious enemy of man. And when we come to the end of the poem, it should be noted that while God emphasizes that the workings and the purposes of his creation are way, way, way beyond man's understanding, certainly Job's understanding, one thing that's not meant to be seen as beyond our understanding is, Aaron, we can understand God's character. If we've got the Old Testament, we can understand God's character because he's revealed himself to us, in many different ways. And so that certainly isn't beyond man's understanding. And nor does God claim, question 6, God doesn't claim to have the right to do whatever he wants to whoever he wants. To the contrary, the divine speeches in this book of Job, the divine speeches make it clear that God's character is completely and wholly set against evil. Okay? You don't come away, if you read this book honestly and properly, you don't come away having any question marks about, well, is God okay with evil? No, I'm sorry, you don't. Okay? So when you see theologians asking questions and not sure about that, know one thing, they don't understand what they're studying. Okay? Or their intentions are not on them.
Because who won?
Yeah, right.
Who won? It was not Satan who won.
It's not.
He killed a bunch of animals and he did a bunch of other stuff, but he lost.
If you want to see Satan, read Revelation 12. We've been studying that with Mike Wilson. He's a 4-time loser in one chapter.
And every
4
time,
times.
one of us chooses right
Yes.
and does the right thing, Satan loses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
And on the cross, what
Uh-huh.
happens? Who loses?
Big time.
Okay, Jesus gets killed,
But
but Satan goes down in a flash.
he does.
And that's the end of this cosmic battle.
Yes.
It's been going on for maybe 10,000 years.
Yeah.
That's what it is. This is just being hammered home.
Uh-huh.
You can win all the little crummy battles that you want,
Uh-huh.
but you're going to lose all the important ones.
Yeah.
Because as long as there's people that are willing to stand with God,
Right.
they can be like Job.
So now we're in the situation of Satan, the writing's on the wall. You bide him whatever time God allows left for him. But he knows where he's going. Okay? He's a sore loser. And he's trying to take as many, he's about collateral damage. Yeah, good point. So, that's Job. Yeah, I'm not going to say more than that, it's short of time. Let's go to Zechariah quickly. Well, no, look at your question 7. Is it God's will that evil happens? Is evil a mystery? Well, that there is evil, that's not a mystery, because you and I have experienced it. But when we're talking about origins of evil, yeah, there is an element of mystery to it. But the one who seems to revolve around it, that's not so much a mystery. And the one who wants to use it, that's not a mystery. But you know what? Evil's not a mystery concerning God's character. He's 100% completely against it, okay? And he will fight it wherever it appears. The mystery of evil isn't located in the heart of God. If it's located anywhere, and I want to be careful how I put this, it's more in the heart of humanity. And I'm thinking about how Jesus expresses, it's not what goes into the body, it's what comes out of it that's the problem. I'm not trying to be Calvinist when I say that. I'm not talking about total depravity or anything. But it's in the heart of humanity, and it's in the hidden goings on of the world in between humans and God. That's where it is. Okay, that's where it's at its worst. In Zechariah, turn to Zechariah chapter 3, we have a vision. I think it's the 4th vision in the book. It's a vision of a high priest named Joshua. And this high priest is standing before the angel of the Lord. And again, this is just the adversary. There's a definite article there. You've got a name in yours. And that's all right because we're looking back. But the adversary is standing at his right hand to do what? To accuse him, because that's what adversaries do, isn't it? Okay. And the Lord, Jehovah, what does he say to Satan?
He rebukes him.
He rebukes him. And he'd understood at one's mind, look, the Lord rebuke you, O Satan, or O adversary. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire? Now Joshua was standing before the angel of the Lord, and he was clothed in what? Filthy garments. What were you not supposed to wear in the tabernacle or the temple? They were supposed to change, weren't they? Wash in the laver before they entered the building or tabernacle, and put on linen robes that had been made most holy. They'd been consecrated, okay? And they never left the temple, right? Because when they finished their service, took the clothes off and put those clothes off and put them aside, okay? So they were clean, they were pure in more senses than one. And so the fact that he's standing there in filthy garments is supposed to tell us something, okay? What do you think they represent? Sin. Yeah, the sin that's upon him. Okay. Remember, this is a messianic picture. Okay. We'll see that in a moment. Now, so he's clothed in filthy garments. Verse 4, the angel of the Lord said to those who were standing before him, remove what? Get rid of those filthy garments from him. And to him he said, behold, I've taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with what? Pure vestment. So I'm going to put those nice, clean, consecrated linen robes on you. And who's the only people that can wear those white linen robes? If you study Revelation,
Who's that saying?
they've got to be a priest, or they've got to be the priests that we are. Yeah, those who wash their clothes in the blood of the Lamb, because they represent good works, don't they? Revelation 19. So, what's the significance of this picture?
A note that my Bible has says that Joshua is a variant of Yeshua.
Okay, and how else can we say that? If we transliterate it, Jesus, isn't it? Yeah. And Jesus became our high priest, didn't he? We understand the Hebrew, right? Yeah, for sure he did. And so he took on our filthy sin, didn't he? It was upon him on the cross. But what happened on that day? Let's read on. And I said, let them put a clean turban on his head and clothe him with garments. The angel of the Lord was standing by. Basically, you have a picture. Verse 9, for behold, on the stone that I have set before Joshua, on a single stone with 7 eyes, that's a perfect number. This is kind of apocalyptic, like we see in Revelation. I will engrave its inscription, declares the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of this land. How quickly? In a single day. And that day, declares the Lord of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to come under his vine and under his fig tree, which are symbols of what? If you're sitting under your fig tree, man, you're at peace. Okay, so that's good news, isn't it? So what do you think he's talking about there? A single day was the sin of the whole world atoned for. The cross, yeah, that's what he's pointing to here, isn't it? So this is for Israel's benefit, the Jews' benefit. Powerful passage. But how does Satan look at this? He's accusing, but does God take any notice of him? He can't really affect him, can he? I don't care that he's wearing filthy garments. I'm going to put clean ones on him. And there's nothing you can do. Okay. And aren't you thankful that every time that critter stands there and accuses God about you, or you, or you, or me, that's what God does for us. See him? In that shining garment? I don't see that sin anymore, because those people are covered by his blood. And so Satan's accusations don't even get to God. They don't even get that far. Okay. Any questions before we finish? We'll have to look at the other passage next time. Clear as mud?